When Raw ends, when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind to Raw with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind to Raw for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind to Raw. It's John Pollock here alongside Wai Ting. And what an intense episode of Raw that we are going to be breaking down. Heads were kicked. We had cars flipped. Glass doors shattered by cinder blocks. The lights are still flickering. And dude took a spinning wheel kick and is still out cold from Raw Underground. What a Raw this was.
Oh, they're all eventful. I mean, that's why we can't change the channel. You know, you got to stay for all 3 hours.
10 p.m. Unfortunately, if you had been following the commercials all night, 10 p.m. It's like 9:54. We went to Raw Underground. They beat themselves to the punch.
Yeah, Raw Underground was really contained this week. It was contained to I don't know, 2 segments. Really,
it was very brief tonight, and I wonder. I think next week will be the test. Have they? I mean, I think that tonight's number is going to influence that. But next Monday, is it going to be a significant amount of Raw? Because I will liken this to our other intense angle tonight is that what's better than one kendo stick shot that's really effective? 8 kendo sticks all at once, and we just nail people over the head with it. That could be the third hour of Raw next week, where we get Raw Underground for 50 minutes.
So I'd like to know in storyline, how long this Shane McMahon Raw Underground operation opens for. Does it just open for these 20 minutes? Gather around, everybody. We're going to open the doors. All right, get out of here. It's 20 minutes later. Or does it run the whole thing? Or I mean, it must start at 10, right?
24/7. We're just a fly on the wall for a couple highlights. They're like the elves working in the North Pole year round. You don't just focus on Christmas. I mean, they're busy at work all year round in their little cave that Big Jordan is guarding outside.
Wow, that long? Okay.
We will get into all of Raw. Lots to dissect from that particular show. Did you have a fine weekend?
I had a pretty good weekend. Yeah, not bad. Yeah. Had some family over for an outdoor barbecue. That was nice.
Okay.
I watched the Wu-Tang documentary on Crave.
With your family?
No.
Oh.
No, they did not partake. This was more of a solo thing. But yeah, I had a great weekend. You?
Pretty good. I watched Rocky. We will be getting into that on Tuesday night. Have you started Rocky yet, Wai?
No. I've already seen the movie, though. And it's I've got time.
Well, this is not the Noah Tokyo Dome show of 2005, so it's much easier. It's just in terms of lengthwise, not as daunting a task.
It's still a 2-hour film, but I mean, it's not really that intimidating to me.
Doesn't have to be 2 hours, but it is technically 2 hours.
Hey, did you hear that Netflix is now adding speed controls?
I was alerted by many people, Wai, that they have introduced this or are going to be introducing this. I don't know if they've actually done it yet.
And will you be using it? Do you use these types of things when you're watching something for fun?
So 9 times out of 10, when I'm watching something on Netflix, it's with my wife, and she has banned me from ever being able to watch anything at more than the normal speed. So I don't know how much, unless if I'm watching on my own, maybe.
Interesting. Okay.
I think I probably will.
Yeah.
Do you think you will delve into this? You think I'm a weirdo now, but 6 months from now, you might see the light and be like, Pollock, you were ahead of the curve big time on this one.
It's certainly I love the feature. I love it for YouTube, especially when I'm trying to just learn an instructional, how to chop lettuce. If I'm watching a video about how to chop lettuce, I don't need you to explain every single detail in your normal speaking. I can do that in 2 times the speed, and I'm happy. Now, how often am I going to watch a video like that on Netflix? Typically, if I'm watching Netflix, I'm sitting down to relax. I want to enjoy, every second of the piece of art that the person has, the creator has intended for me to I don't know, take in at whatever speed that they intended. But then there are some shows that I start and I just like, I don't have the patience to sit through all 10 episodes, but I just want to know the ending because I watched the pilot. You've got me curious now. I just don't give a shit about all the stuff in the middle. I just want to know the end. So, in those situations, I could see this coming in handy. Just breeze through the rest of these seasons. Like, you know what I mean, right, John? Like, some of these shows are like, the premise is really good. They really got you hooked in for this mystery, but you just don't enjoy it. Like, whether it just be the acting or the world or just like the stress. I just sometimes don't enjoy it, but I care enough to know the finish. So in those situations, I could see myself doing that.
Well, I'm a completionist like you. I start a series. I got to get through it. And sometimes it can be painful to get through. It's much like sitting down and reading a book. Like if I don't finish that book, it's just lingering and it will be just sitting there. And I know that I gotta just get through these last 200 pages, even if I don't really care for the book. I've got to finish it. It's just like a mark against my soul if I don't finish it.
Yeah, I can understand. I mean, if you can only do 2 times speed reading, right?
I've become a pretty good speed reader.
Really? Okay. So you can read, but like your speed reading is just your normal speed.
It is, but I feel that since I have undergone my self-imposed book challenge this year, I've literally like been keeping track of how long it's taken me to read, and it's incredible the rate of which I can go through some of these books now.
Wow, superpower!
It's what I've got: dates and reading. So there you go, folks. My resume is looking pretty stealth. Let's go and chat about some news items. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and then we'll preview the week ahead. It's always a fun time. Off the top, UFC 252. Where are you at right now? A yes or a no or a maybe for watching this? At least the main event.
It's a maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Kamala passed away over the weekend. This was I thought that this got quite a lot of coverage. This is a character that I think many people very familiar with, and someone who, God, when you dive into his career, which I have done quite a lot of over the last 24 hours, I mean, he was someone that went to so many territories and places that you may not even be familiar with that he went to. Like early in his career, went to Mexico and would return there. Very early on, went over to Germany, went to England for Dale Martin's joint promotions, did like a tour of Africa, and then hit pretty much every meaningful territory in the United States, coming up to Montreal and Canada, 3 big stints with the WWF throughout his career. But when you think of Kamala, first of all, a character that would not see the light of day in 2020. And I think you could even make an argument that at the time it was fully fleshed out in 1982, there would have been some backlash to this portrayal that he was very aware of and believed that, I was a guy playing a role, but understood that in a lot of territories, and this guy was born to sharecroppers and grew up in the 50s and 60s in Mississippi. So this was someone that was exposed to a lot of racism that extended to his professional wrestling days and understood that there was a fan base out there that was racist and understood that the promoters were somewhat playing to those stereotypes and had a very, he understood what this character was. He was not naive to it, but I mean, you look at this, if you were not someone that grew up a wrestling fan and you're just watching or studying this character, it's a pretty jarring one in 2020.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And hearing Kamala's name be brought back up into sort of like the I don't know, news cycle, and just, being a part of regular conversation really like puts it into a different context in 2020. I think for so long, like most wrestling fans, we just kind of accept gimmicks like these as, the norm in professional wrestling. People, typically, people of color will portray a stereotypical character, at a time when like wrestling, I think, was very much like created based off of tropes, and that can either be, positive or negative. And in the case of people of color, that typically has been negative. It's something that I would like to say that we've advanced far beyond at this point, but there's certainly on this episode of Raw, plenty of examples that still, carry on that trend. But, seeing something like Kamala be brought up in the bet news again, certainly I think will introduce some discussion about what have we been exposing ourselves to as fans of professional wrestling throughout all these years, and how has it affected our perceptions of, how people of color are portrayed. So, regardless of all that, the person performing the character, I've always felt did a tremendous, tremendous job. And
I don't think there were too many people who could have pulled off, like James Harris. I mean, he was not a great wrestler, but this was a character that by its very creation was a guy that had never wrestled. Like he was, when this was fully formed in Memphis, Jerry Lawler's instructions were, I don't want you to do a thing that resembles a wrestling hold. Like you are, like, for lack of a better term, this guy was portrayed as a cannibal, as a savage from the jungle of Uganda that has been brought over and dropped into Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a character that I have to say is quite amazing how long it endured.
Yes.
From the 80s, where I'm sure it really fit perfectly with sort of the wrestling at the time, but even all the way up until I don't know, the 90s, and even in some circles in the 2000s, making like brief stints here and there. It's a character that for some reason like always managed to find a fit in some form of professional wrestling.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head that here was a character that I think the key to Kamala was that he could go to all of these territories and he would come in and he would immediately draw business. You can look at, the Kamala character was something that when he was over in England, he went on this tour of Africa. And when he came back from there, that's when he first started experimenting with face paint. And you kind of saw the first kind of hints of this character that he had in mind. And he bounced it off of Frankie Kane, who was a booker in Mississippi at the time. And then he ended up getting hired in Memphis. And that's where they kind of fully fleshed it out. Lawler did the artwork on his face. They shot that introductory video in Jerry Jarrett's backyard. And then they brought him in. And they immediately, it's a very interesting lesson on bringing in a monster and how to book this guy who was, not a great wrestler. This was, a heavy attraction, but he was brought in. He beats Jerry Lawler right out of the gate. And just through these vignettes that they had run for him, they drew well for the mystique of who is this Kamala? And this is coming at a time, Jerry Lawler's fresh off of the Andy Kaufman program. So this is what they're following at the time. He wins the Southern Heavyweight title, and then Kamala starts going through all of the baby faces, and they're just building towards Lawler getting that rematch. And they would do the rematch, and Kamala would keep the title, and then they built up to, like, the thing that's so impressive in Memphis is that they're running at the Mid-South Coliseum every Monday night. So it's not like you're going to all different parts to draw. You're going to the same city every Monday night. And they did like 3 straight weeks of over 10,000 people. And Lawler won the title back in mid-August. And that was kind of it. Like once Kamala lost, like the luster was somewhat diminished, and that would be a theme throughout his career, that then he'd move down the card, and invariably his pay would go down. He would get upset about his pay, and then he'd ultimately leave the territory. And that was sort of, he was standing up for himself, feeling he was underpaid, but at the same time, by the time his pay got to that point, the promoters had kind of gotten their most out of him, and it was probably much like a booking of an Andre it was time to move on to another territory. And after Memphis, he went to Mid-South, he went to World Class, and had very good runs in all of these territories. His first time in WWF, that's where, he had first worked with Andre in Mid-South, and you've probably seen the video clip circulating where he body slams Andre, and then they take that feud into the WWF in '84. Would leave there again with issues with pay, and then he would bounce around. He came back, and in 1986 into 1987, this was his big run with Hulk Hogan, and they did outstanding business together. They headlined 3 shows here at Maple Leaf Gardens within 7 weeks. They drew big houses at Madison Square Garden, at the Rosemont Horizon, and the Tacoma Dome. They drew over 20,000 people in early January. Like, they did significant business together and would be his biggest spotlight of a run with the WWF. So in that whole build-up to WrestleMania 3, it was Hogan working a lot with Kamala. But Kamala doesn't get booked on that WrestleMania at the Pontiac Silverdome. He leaves again and then had what younger fans will probably remember was his last WWF run, and that's where he comes back in 92. He does the program with The Undertaker, and a famous story at the time that Kamala has told over and over again is that the SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium, he got paid $13,000 for that match with The Undertaker, and they were like third or fourth match on the card, and he had always claimed that he had seen in Pat Patterson's like booking sheets that The Undertaker got paid $500,000 for that same match, which I have a really hard time believing that Taker got anywhere close to that for SummerSlam 92, given what that show drew and where they were on the card. But he has said that story over and over again. They eventually turn him babyface. He's paired with Reverend Slick, and then that would end around the end of 93. He went for a couple of months to WCW in the middle of 95. And then, from 2001, he does the Gimmick Battle Royal and would just pop up every now and then on WWE for cameos. Was a very well-remembered character, like a very distinct look. Always one of my favorite themes was Kamala's in the WWF. And then, he had this whole resurgence in the 2000s where he got to do these novelty indie spots, including a very interesting match with Bryan Danielson when Danielson was ROH champion, and wrestled as late as 2010. But when you look at him, like, here was a guy that drew very well in a lot of territories that he went to. And the biggest ones, I would say, like, it was a very impressive run he had in Memphis. But then when Hulk Hogan was at his hottest, like, Kamala was a big opponent for Hogan.
If you can say they've wrestled Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker, Jerry Lawler, and Bryan Danielson, a very long-lasting, very unique career.
Yeah, and it's just been very sad. Like, he was diagnosed with diabetes years and years ago. I think he first was told about it in around 92, and it ultimately got so bad that both of the lower portion of both legs needed to be amputated, and he had significant health problems. And then we found out Jason King, who's a reporter at ESPN, was pretty close with James Harris. He did a big profile on him a few years back, and reported on Monday that last Wednesday he had contracted COVID-19, which they believed he had to go to multiple times per week to a dialysis center. And he was fine on Sunday morning, but then went into cardiac arrest and died Sunday afternoon. He was 70. And for a guy that had all of these health problems, that it was just a very unfortunate, way that his life, like, he went through a lot of suffering in his latter years. And whether his death was directly a result of COVID-19, if that was a complication, like, that was certainly something that played a factor in all of this.
Yeah, it's really sad. More shitty news to kind of add on to this entire year. But it's really unfortunate that, like, I personally really heard through Kamala has been through these really terrible incidents, really one after another. It's really, really unfortunate. And it seems like this was a loss that has really affected a great deal of the wrestling community because so many people have such fond memories of him.
This one surprised me that it didn't have a graphic tonight on Raw.
It did, off the top.
They did have a graphic.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I missed that. Okay. Well, that's nice that they had that at the start of Raw. The G1 schedule has been released by New Japan, and they are going forward 19 dates away, starting September 18th with back-to-back nights in Osaka. And it's going to run through October 18th. Last 3 nights will be at Sumo Hall. We talked a bit about this on the show on Saturday, but I guess the next interesting question, Wai, is what is the field going to consist of? Will they be at full capacity regarding foreigners?
That is the question. I'm sure one that they're trying to monitor very closely all the time. that admittedly, I'm very excited for the G1 to return. I'm excited for a lot of these potential matchups, even with the roster members that are there. But if there's something that is really taking the luster out of it this year, it might be the fact that we have a depleted, half of a New Japan Pro Wrestling roster. Part of what I think made last year so unique was the addition of a name like a John Moxley being thrown in the mix, and not realizing how exactly that might look. Regardless, getting the chance to potentially see like a Yuji Nagata again back into the G1 because of, strictly numbers, that in itself, I think is interesting. So I'm sure the matches will be great, but at this point, I wonder if we would even get, I know you guys had talked about potentially seeing some of the New Zealanders come back. The Americans, of course, are really interesting, whether or not they'll have any sort of interaction. That would certainly make, anyway, the whole situation is changing all the time. So who knows, like in a month's time, what that'll look like.
If New Japan was in a position where, for whatever reason, they are restricted with who they can use for the G1, do you see them going with the roster as it's currently made up, that it would be New Japan talent, or would there be an impetus to make the G1, in the absence of all the foreigners, to maybe look for some creative participants within Japan, outside of New Japan, that you would be more inclined to bring in?
I would personally love that. I guess I'm just trying to think, like, who would you work with? What companies would you work with at this point? Who would a name be that you could see New Japan working with?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't be, like, I think that there would be some pressure to put some surprises in, but I don't know how reluctant they would be, as opposed to just, hey, we've got our talent that we're going to take care of, and it's going to be a New Japan heavy focused tournament. But I mean, there's New Japan. I mean, it's all in how much of a necessity it is. Like, you could talk to any company, and I would think that most companies would be willing to loan out a talent for such a major tournament, that hopefully it has the residual effect that someone goes in there, has a great showing, and that's our guy that comes back.
You think it's just heavyweights, or do we see a mixture of juniors again? I
would say you have to have some junior heavyweights in there this year.
Certainly, I think so too. Especially with a name like Hiromu, who, I mean, is really one of the top stars right now. I mean, like, the lack of foreigners aside, I think the idea of seeing Hiromu Takahashi in the mix proper with everybody in a G1 block, that in itself, I think, could be a big draw. Yeah,
I could see, depending on what their numbers are and how much they need to fill spots, I could see Hiromu, I would think, regardless, I think should be in it. Sho Tanaka would be another one that I would be looking at that maybe could get a spot. And yeah, a lot of this is going to be contingent on that foreigner question, and how much the field is made up. And we're only a month out from this, 5 weeks from this tournament. So it probably will not be too long until they're revealing the field for this. Did you get to see any of New Japan Strong, the debut show on Friday?
No, unfortunately not.
I don't think it's something you need to go out of your way to see, but they have released the lineup for Friday's card. It's going to be the semifinals of this #1 contenders tournament for the U.S. title. Jeff Cobb against Kenta, which Jeff Cobb has promised WH Park 20 flips we're going to see in this match. So I think that WH Park has spiked interest in New Japan Strong. David Finlay against Tama Tonga, and they've also announced some tag matches with TJP, Alex Zane, and ACH taking on PJ Black, Mysterioso, and Blake Christian, and Clark Connors and Jordan Clearwater against Logan Regal and Barrett Brown. So an interesting makeup of talent. So 4 matches on Friday's show, but I think the Jeff Cobb Kenta match has gained lots of notoriety over the last 24 hours.
Special stipulation brought forward by WH Park. So I think WH should be booking all the King of Pro Wrestling matches.
If there's one thing I hear all the time from WH is his desire for more flips in matches.
That's right. But did you get a chance to see the last episode? And
yeah, I watched the show on Friday night. I mean, I wouldn't say any of the matches were spectacular. It's very similar to the Impact Wrestling setup, where it's just an empty studio. So you're really relying on just the performers in the ring for any kind of environment. Kenta, I found his style really worked well because of the sound of his strikes, and he's got just tremendous facial expressions that it worked. He also came out with like his hair is all like, this looks like a guy who decided to go to sleep for the last 5 months and he woke up for this particular new series on New Japan World. He just comes out and dude's been living the quarantine life. But him and Carl Fredericks, it was that was the best match of the four. The rest, I thought it was very basic matches, like nothing to write home about on week one. So I was more on the WH side of things when it came to assessing certain matches. But week two, it looks like an interesting lineup. I think this looks like a stronger show than week number one. We also have the updated card for Jingu Stadium on August 29th. So our new lineup, it consists of 6 matches. Evil and Naito for the double championship. Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi versus Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kota Ibushi for the tag titles. Hiromu Takahashi, Taiji Ishimori for the junior heavyweight title. Shingo Takagi against Minoru Suzuki for the never openweight title. Our very anticipated 4-way for the King of Pro Wrestling crown, which will be made up with the winners of the August 26th Cork and Hall show with stipulations galore. And then rounding out Jingu Stadium, Yoshinobu Kanemaru versus Master Wato.
Ooh. I mean, it's yet another, early showcase for Master Wato. If it's an undercard match, I really, at this point, I'm starting to accept the look, like how you might move into like a new house. You maybe you love everything about it, but you hate this one room and the layout of this one room. You're going to live in that house for like 2-3 months and you're going to get used to that one room. And I've gotten used to the decor of this Master Wato. It's fine. We'll let the wrestling speak for itself and hope he has a good match. But to me, the people's main event on that particular show is, again, the never openweight championship. You got Shingo Takagi taking on Minoru Suzuki in what looks like an awesome match.
I would say it's closer to the equivalent of moving into a brand new house and not realizing that there's a train that comes by every 20 minutes. And because a train is what I think of when this gimmick comes up.
Can you imagine when he turns heel, though?
Sure.
Maybe.
What does that consist of?
Well, maybe
denouncing
instead of blue hair,
this character and informing us that this entire run has been a waste of time and now I'm going to hit the reset.
Possibly.
This whole excursion should have been.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's like sort of like the nerdy guy right now, and then like he starts wearing leather jackets. Maybe he just becomes like Onita. He starts smoking.
This guy needs a cigarette. You're right.
Yeah,
that would help. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Maybe there is hope in Master Wato. Over the weekend, actually Thursday through Sunday, Fozzy did a series of shows. This has gotten a lot of focus, including a show. This was at the infamous Sturgis rally that WCW fans will remember. They did shows in North and South Dakota. They also did one in Fort Madison, Iowa, among the 4 shows they did. This Sturgis rally got a lot of attention over the weekend because this gathering was to encompass 250,000 people. There had been some photos going around from the Fozzy shows of lots of people. It looked like they were not obeying the 6 feet markers that must have been on the floor. I didn't have my ruler out. It seemed like they were just slightly closer than 6 feet together, and I don't know what the percentage of masks were. Chris Jericho did address this on Saturday night on his online show. He said that these shows were kept on because there had been a low number of COVID cases in North and South Dakota, and the shows were either outdoors or the indoor ones were limited to, one show was limited to 50% capacity, the other 35%. But I mean, you're watching this way and it was concerning. And I think a lot of people were. And on top of that, like I would think that if you were an AEW roster member, it would have been somewhat concerning knowing that there's TV this Wednesday and this show, it's heavily built around Chris Jericho. So, I mean, obviously he's going to be tested. And Jericho said that the band and crew, they were all tested and stayed in their stayed in their vehicle or whatever, in their tour bus. So, I mean, there was some precautions. But when it came to fans attending this, I mean, it was like temperature checks and masks being handed out. I mean, to me, that's I wouldn't even say that's bare minimum these days. I think that's temperature checks mean almost nothing.
Yeah. It's been a little bit difficult to kind of read, like, as a fan, just as a onlooker, like Chris Jericho's own real perspective about the whole thing. I mean, certainly working for AEW, they seem to be a company that, for the most part, has taken this like pretty seriously and have been pretty proactive with testing and everything. But Jericho also, like, promoting a cruise during all this seems like relatively tone deaf, and then doing something like this after like performing in front of a crowd at a Sturgis rally, which is kind of like getting a rep for basically like being like a bit of an like COVID, like anti-mask or anti-coronavirus like type of thing, or like talking about coronavirus like it's anyway. I don't want to speak for the people at Sturgis, but
Smash Mouth is getting smashed for their comments here. I couldn't believe Smash Mouth was getting booked in 2020 at Sturgis Rally.
Listen, I think that's a bad look to begin with, to book Smash Mouth. And listen, Smash Mouth are a very easy target in all circles. So that's just maybe, a sticky situation on all ends. I think Jericho's excuses seem to indicate that he's thought about this and that there was a level of like, thinking before agreeing to do the show. As we progress with all this stuff, like, everybody's level of risk is going to be different. The only, thing that I think we could really chastise somebody for is if they're going to be going against like things that are regulation and things that are rules. And clearly it was not a rule at this place for people to socially distance or wear masks. Jericho, I think, will be tested he will be tested, of course. So like AEW can always rely on that. So I hope he's okay, of course. I think that, I would hope that, I don't know what medical chances may be of everything, but I'm hoping he's perfectly fine. But I guess this is, more of a lesson that things like this are going to be ridiculed by people. Because they want to ensure that everybody is following the same precautions that we all are. Like, a lot of us are making huge sacrifices to inconvenience our daily lives. And I guess the feeling that others aren't is making people feel like they're being disrespected.
Yeah, it's like I have less concerns about like the band contracting anything as more than just, when you're talking about 250,000 people, which I would assume a decent percentage of coming from different states, what are they leaving South Dakota with and potentially bringing back? It just seems like here is a petri dish of problems and dispersing them back to where they came from and what this promotes as well. And I do understand people's frustration with all of this and feeling the need that we do need to push some boundaries to see what is acceptable. And this to me would be multiple steps beyond what I think people would say would be reasonable risk to see what we are capable of. And I would also be looking at the US as lower on the scale of an example of a country that is willing to see where the next step is in terms of normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, like, if you're going to blame anybody, I feel like you have to really blame the people that are putting the event on and really the jurisdiction that the event is taking place in for allowing it.
They did some survey of citizens, and it was something like 60% of citizens there did not want this thing to take place, and they went forward with it. So it was like even the locals, like a good percentage of them, did not want this coming, and I don't blame them. Like, don't bring this to our state. Just exactly what was mentioned. Like, we have lower case numbers here. We don't want to blow this up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I get the feeling you're going to see a lot more instances like this in the coming weeks as at least like speaking for us in Ontario, as like, you know, things start to open back up, and even in the States, in some parts, things starting to open back up, you're going to see, you know, continued conflict of what people are comfortable with versus where people feel like they should continue to be very cautious.
Well, we're seeing it now with schools going back, and like some schools where it's like full on classes. You're talking like 30 people in a classroom. That's the current plan for a certain segment. Others, I think it's more of a staggered return to school. But for some, it's like full classes that we're looking at in September, and there's a lot of concern about that.
Yeah, and that thing looked packed. So there are clearly a lot of people that are perfectly fine with it.
Smash Mouth is still a hit in 2020.
You have a song like All Star, or Walking on the Sun, two just seminal works of our time. You deserve to have a career forever.
Yes. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead. Maybe pretty appropriate, actually. This is the COVID anthem for Sturgis.
I wish I could have like a Zoom feed of just like that, a crowd of bikers just like getting down to that song, all putting their L's up on their head.
Oh man, if there was one straight line, it's my disdain of Smash Mouth. I'm just glad it's consistent throughout all these decades. But hey, they're still around, so who's laughing? At least, you know, in Ontario way, the most semblance of normalcy was seeing the Toronto Maple Leafs knocked out. Like it felt like normal today to hear everybody just ready to rip apart this Toronto Maple Leafs organization, and we got to just break it down, burn down this house, and rebuild it. It's like we're back to normal with the Toronto Maple Leafs choking early and living up to people's minimal expectations and then still failing.
Well, to me, like the past, I would say week for the Leafs, and this is coming as a complete non-hockey fan at this point, but just seeing the reaction online really kind of like showed me how fickle fandom really is, especially when it comes to our local sports teams. Because like they had one game where they were up 3-0, ended up blowing that 3-0 lead to lose 4-3. Okay, and then the whole world was like, "Man, the Leafs suck. Fuck the Leafs. Fuck the Leafs." Then the next game,
there's no worse fan base than Toronto fans.
Oh, then the next game, they're down 0-3, heading into the third period. This is an elimination game. They're pretty much out. With 3.5 minutes to go, they score 3 goals, John. They scored 3 goals in the span of 3.5 minutes remaining at the end of the game. And then at that point, it was like, praise the Leafs. They're the greatest team ever. They head into overtime. They win the damn game to force the game 5. And it's just like, wow, the Leafs are the best. I love hockey. And then, of course, they lose the next game, and it's back to normal.
I just think it's Toronto Maple Leafs. It's the hardest team, I think, in the NHL. Montreal Canadiens might be up there, too, like in terms of a demanding fan base, but it is unbelievable. And I say it as a guy that is, you know, several steps removed from being like a hockey follower. I'm just kind of, I'm just like watching from afar, and it's like, man, the intensity of this pressure. I personally, I will say this, and maybe I'll lose my Canadian citizenship. I hope the Maple Leafs never win the Stanley Cup in my lifetime. I want to just live in a world where it's the constant chase and disappointment, because I find what happens, we win the cup, it's like it's all over.
I want them to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, and they lose in overtime.
Like the Bruins from a few years ago, but in the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, that to me is the perfect way for the Leafs to get... When they first came up with this whole playoff contraption, there was actually people saying, oh, of course, this is going to be the year that we win the cup, and it's going to be with an asterisk. It's like, you people, like nothing will satisfy. It's like, oh God, we got to win the cup under these circumstances. Well, trust me, this is the Maple Leafs. You really don't have to worry about that.
You know, like I certainly think more like of sports as sort of like from a wrestling fan's perspective, and I have to think like, yeah, the Leafs will win the Stanley Cup. Then what? Then what's your story? You know, it's all about the chase.
It's all over after that. I mean, how are the Red Sox like that compelling now that they've won multiple times?
No,
so.
You're either the best or you're the worst. We gotta make the long. Do we have the longest streak?
Yeah. Beyond. I mean, 67.
I hate to put you on the spot, but yeah.
When did the Blackhawks last win a Stanley Cup?
God,
they've won one recently, like in the last decade or so. So they had a long drought, but then won. It has to be the Maple Leafs.
Okay, well, don't correct us, everybody. Don't really.
Oh, I want everyone to at me, please, please, in capital letters.
Okay, I'll tell you actually.
Okay.
2014. 2015 they won.
The Blackhawks did. Oh, that recently. Okay, I thought it was within a decade, but it was even closer than that. Okay. This is somewhat connected to Chris Jericho, maybe. The exhibition fight between Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson was supposed to take place September 12th, which is a week after All Out. It's now been postponed until November 28th. So I think that makes it somewhat interesting to see if All Out is even a possibility to do this Jericho-Tyson thing. And if so, if you would be shooting that angle on Wednesday, and they may have moved on. That may not be a plan at all, but it's going to refuel that speculation at least.
Yeah, it certainly is hard for me to imagine that he would take part in any sort of match. If we're talking, something like a special referee's role, or like what he did at WrestleMania, what is it, some whatever enforcer? I think that's very possible. We're just really talking about cameo at this point, right? And throwing a work punch.
I think if AEW is using him, I think they want him in a match.
I just don't see him getting that physical and risking, his health by taking any sort of flat back bump.
I don't know what his body can really handle. I mean, this is an exhibition that they're promoting in November. It's not like a full-fledged fight, but it's...
but an injury will destroy all that.
Yes. I don't know if Tyson is necessarily thinking about long-term versus how lucrative is this AEW offer? Ultimately, I see him doing something with AEW. The question is when.
The AEW offer will always be there.
I think so, too. I think, they've shot this angle and they'll get to it at some point, but I think it makes it a little more intriguing for this Wednesday because it's been brought up by multiple people about the idea of Tyson leading to Orange Cassidy beating Jericho, which is a very simple, effective angle to get to All Out if you were going to do that. But I guess this at least opens the window for the opportunity to do that. And the final note here, very savvy. Last week we were talking about ESPN Plus up to 8.5 million subscribers. Well, this Wednesday, they are increasing their monthly price way. They are going from $4.99 a month to $5.99 a month for new subscribers. And this comes just days ahead of what's going to be one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year with UFC 252. So for people that already were subscribing to this in the States, you get your old price for at least a year, and they are not changing the yearly amount. You can get the service for the year for $49.99. And I think that's the strategy here, is that we're increasing the price per month because we want everyone to lock in for a year. And it's kind of strange that WWE does not have that option to lock yourself in for a year. And that's always been, up until these last couple of quarters, we've always seen this big churn of people that drop the service. And I mean, I've never really given it that much thought until today of the fact that that's not an option, that you have $9.99 per month, or you do something like $90 for the year, that I think a sizable amount would lock themselves into, knowing they get a free month. And then you know what your business is going to be for a year by locking people in. So I do think this is a smart strategy by ESPN Plus, and I think people that want to get this pay-per-view on Saturday, a buck is not going to impact them.
No, and I hate that. Squeezing even $1 out of you, but the psychology involved in pricing is just incredibly fascinating to me. But I'm with you. If I was somebody who subscribed to this thing, I wouldn't even think anything of this. I mean, it's a jump from $4.99 to $5.99, and that just feels so insignificant that it's not even worth thinking about. And I feel like that's exactly the type of psychology that they probably want.
They're also keeping the bundle price. So I think that's what they're steering you towards. Either get ESPN Plus for the year or get the bundle for, I think it's $12.99 a month for Disney and Hulu as well. I think this pay-per-view way is going to be gigantic on Saturday. I've been looking forward to this fight since the second one ended. And when they announced it, this is going to be such a huge fight on Saturday. There's such huge stakes involved.
What sort of stuff will be coming up on the site?
Oh, great segue. So this week, first off, Tuesday night is our Rocky review. This is our new film review series, kicking off with Rocky 1, starring Sylvester Stallone and Carl Weathers from 1976.
Yes, the classic that started it all. I'm looking forward to going through this entire series with John on our new Patreon. This, of course, replaces our Marvel Cinematic Universe reviews for the time being. We'll be doing every Rocky film, Rocky Balboa, ending with the 2 Creed films. And I'm looking forward to following this decades-long arc and several very different feeling films as we progress through the entire catalog. So that'll start Tuesday, and it will repeat every single month. The first one, and to some people, maybe the best one, Rocky 1.
Yes, that will be available for all Cafe members, dropping Tuesday night. Wednesday, we've got Rewinded Dynamite and Up Next. Thursday, I'm going to be doing a UFC 252 preview show with James Lynch, our former colleague and great MMA analyst and reporter. So he's going to be joining me. We're going to go through UFC 252.
And great John Pollock impressionist. Meaning he does a great impression of John Pollock.
Okay, well, maybe he will break that out. We will find out. You can tune into that on Thursday. James is a man of many impressions, beyond just me.
That is true. His Musashi is probably his best.
Top notch. Then what else do we've got? We have on Thursday, Braden and John Cena are going to be doing an Up Next movie review of Money Plane, starring Kelsey Grammer and Adam Copeland. And I saw a clip of this that I think Braden posted, and this looks like the most insane film that I will not watch, but I'll probably listen to their review.
I guarantee you the review will probably be more interesting, at least to me, than the actual movie. So awesome. John Cena's been doing a lot of great stuff over at the the Up Next Patreon. He just released a new show that he's got on their Patreon called A Shot in the Dark, which is a weekly review of AEW Dark. And along with a whole lot of other things that John Cena might end up watching. He's a guy who watches a lot of indies that are out there. So if he catches a match that he thinks you should see, he'll probably talk about it on this show, A Shot in the Dark. It's a 20-minute thing, gets you all caught up. And actually last week was just 10 minutes. And at this point, I'm awesome. I need more short bursts like these. So check out the Up Next Patreon for some of John Cena's work.
They've got a pretty stacked lineup for Dark on Tuesday night. Ray Phoenix has a match. Rachel Ellering was actually on the tag tournament show on Monday night, as was Nicole Savoy. So some interesting stuff going on there. Friday night, we're live with Rewind to SmackDown, 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Right after SmackDown, you can tune in, call in. Saturday, the Rocky Maivia Picture Show returns. Nate Milton will be joined by not one, but 2 guests, Stephen Gooderidge and MJ from NJ, as they discuss the pilot episode of Ballers, which may as well be a documentary now of Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, isn't that weird? I'm sure Nate will have plenty of thoughts to speak of our new XFL co-president. Or co-owner,
they're going to have to. At this point. This could be the pivot from the Rocky Maivia Picture Show to our XFL recap show at some point.
Wow. Imagine that.
Do you ever watch Ballers?
Never. No, I've heard great things, though. Do you?
I watched the first season, and I think I stopped after season 1. I mean, it's okay. It's almost like a very Entourage-ish, which was okay.
You're saying it might be a 2X viewing?
1.5 to be generous. Yeah. And then Saturday night, capping off the week, it's our UFC 252 post show. Myself and Phil will be going live at youtube.com/postwrestling. Go subscribe. You will get a notification when we're going live, so you won't miss anything. And we will be going live right after the main card, where either Stipe Miocic will be retaining his heavyweight title, or Daniel Cormier could have one of the great endings to a MMA career by winning the heavyweight title, and after he gives a heartfelt retirement speech, everyone's going to be prodding him to fight John Jones again.
Well, you sold me.
All right. What a week. Postwrestling.com. Go check all of that stuff out. And also, Tuesday, Andrew Thompson will have an interview up on the site with Tracy Williams of Ring of Honor. So check all of that out. Anything else, Way, before we get to...
I wanted to give a shout out to UNWH and Dylan Fox for a great edition of Post Pro Res that is up on our main feed right now. That took place on Saturday, and on Sunday, WH dropped his latest edition of the Long and Winding World Road with Daniel Makabe,
very good
independent wrestler, talking about just his love of All Japan Pro Wrestling in the 90s, and in particular, this Hidden Gem tag team match that I really had not heard about until Daniel, brought it up here. So to hear those two break down that match, you can find a link to watch that in the show description of that particular podcast. So check all that out at postwrestling.com.
Monday Night Raw from the Performance Center. They were immediately plugging Raw Underground, 10 p.m. They were not making you have a chance to forget about what was coming up in hour number 3. But in case you are worried about all these changes that Raw has been making of late, let's go to the old reliable contract signing, Way.
Oh, good. Yes, of course. Yeah.
What can a match become without a contract being signed? And we were going to get multiple contracts signed because Samoa Joe is our MC, and he noted that Dominik will not just be signing a contract to face Seth at SummerSlam, he's also signing a WWE contract. So looks like they're trying to get all the Mysterios to put pen to paper.
Any, I guess, did this indicate to you whether or not you're getting it? I mean, the fact that Dominik Mysterio is taking part in a match at SummerSlam, does that indicate to you what Ray's status might be?
I think everyone is expecting that Ray is staying with WWE. I think it would be at this point very surprising if anything else happened. And based on tonight, I think we have to get Ray at SummerSlam.
So, based on tonight. If he's got one, he's only got one eye, though.
The optic nerve was fine, though.
Okay. All right.
Been busy recovering.
Sure.
Maybe he'll just have a dark patch on that side of the eye. It was great on his,
because he already had one.
On his Instagram. He's doing some product advertisement, and he's wearing the mask where his eye is all covered. So I mean, kudos to him.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's commitment.
You didn't listen to the Seth Rollins interview, did you?
No.
That's
the one today?
Yes.
No, I haven't.
That's a whole separate podcast. He, in a nutshell, was asked about the lack of long-term storytelling, and his belief is that the fan base is just so wired now to want instant gratification that they are just not wired to have the patience level for long-term storytelling. And surprise, surprise, Seth Rollins had a negative response to an interview he conducted. And I would say that when you're in a company where...
Sorry. So he didn't like the quote? Or he didn't like the...
No, sorry. There was negativity towards his answer.
Oh, yes, okay.
Where he was critical of the fan base, saying that, our younger audience, they don't have the patience for long-term storytelling. To which I think most would counter that your chairman that oversees creative has the worst attention span when it comes to long-term storytelling, and stuff gets torn up on a moment's notice. And that I think, quite honestly, I think that's a real cop-out for a company that cannot stick to a lot of long-term storytelling. And the ones they do, I mean, what's the best program going on in WWE right now? I would say Orton and Edge has been largely met with positivity once you get past the WrestleMania match. And I think that
Sasha Bayley is going to be a long-term thing by the end of it. And people
I look at some of the most popular, we're talking about the MCU films. Let's get out of the wrestling bubble. You know what I mean? I just think like that's such a misread of your audience. And it's also one that you don't even have the ability to back that claim up because there's so few examples of long storytelling that WWE, it's notorious that things get changed on a dime.
So is he saying like that in defense of this Dominik storyline? Because somehow by the end of this whole thing, people will have been I guess younger people will have been shown to have overreacted to the eye for an eye match.
Here's a portion of the quote. I think it's kind of a lost art across the board in entertainment, that being long-term storytelling. And not that it's a lost art, just the audience. As we get into this age of instant gratification, they don't have the patience for long-term storytelling. When you can binge watch your favorite series in 2 days as opposed to 2 months, it creates a different precedent for how we intake our entertainment. It's the difference between watching a full match and just seeing GIFs of it or the highlights. So I just think people are intaking their entertainment on a different level. It's the difference between artists releasing singles as opposed to full-length albums because of the way consumers are taking their entertainment in. So he's looking at it. It's a generational thing that they're just doing things week to week.
I actually like the answer a lot. I mean, it tells you that he thinks a lot about something like this. But I guess I just don't really know if it's relevant to this particular story and the criticisms of his particular performances. I mean, at least speaking as for myself, my issue was never like, where is this going? Where is this going? It was more so like, I hate these promos. I can't stand this character. I can't like stand the pattern of speech he's now all of a sudden, you know, just starting to I don't know, adopt. But I've actually like come to enjoy it fine. Like I've said in previous podcasts, I've kind of turned the corner on him. I don't know if that's just me or maybe it's the fact that I think he's actually been better as the character. I'm really unsure, but I mean, that's an interesting thought. I don't know. Like that's also to like Seth is also insinuating that everything that we have seen up until this point will make more sense in the future. And do you feel, well, let's say right now,
I don't think he was really saying that, because he was actually asked about like, do you know like the long-term like arc of where the story is going? And he pretty much said like, I don't know long-term, like it's really week to week, like was his answer towards this. And like, I just think it comes down to, if something is good, people will support it. And I will look at like a Marvel movie that, I mean, you're asking people to spend money to sit down for 3 hours and follow this thing for 11 years. And it was some of the most successfully commercial films of all time. Conversely, I can sit down for 3 hours of Raw every week, and what happened 2 weeks ago has no bearing today, and things that were introduced may be dropped. Remember that guy Mustafa Ali?
Vague? No. Yes, I do. Yeah. Well, long-term storytelling, John. You don't know. He might be lurking in the shadows. He might be one of these Retribution guys.
Well, anyway, yeah, he did that on the Gorilla Position podcast. If people want to listen to it, there's a link to it in the update. But nonetheless, contract signing. Joe introduces Seth as the Goliath in our David versus Goliath tale. And Dominik comes out to his own theme music and his trusty kendo stick. Joe takes the kendo stick, and Rollins, Joe refers to as sad. He says, "You're Seth freaking Rollins. You should be the greatest performer of this generation instead of this version." And Rollins, he says that he has given Dominik and Ray a choice this entire time. He never forced this upon them. Rollins is the one who was forced into this position. He was Mr. Burn It Down, but you all crapped on it. When will it be enough? And Dominik says, "It will never be enough. Aleister Black is not the same. My father's confidence isn't the same. You took good men and changed them for the worst and used the greater good for yourself." And Dominik says, "Wrestling was my dream, but my new dream is kicking your ass, you bitch." Rollins says, "You wouldn't last 10 seconds with me in a regular match. I'm the best of my generation, so I'm going to suggest that at SummerSlam, you're allowed to use the kendo stick as well as any other weapon. And then you're going to have no excuses when I end your career before it even starts." And we got many signatures here across 3 contracts, and the match is official.
So what, did he say this was like a no DQ?
He said this was a weapons are legal for Dominik match. That's what I took from this. Can Seth not use weapons? I don't know.
Yeah. I wasn't exactly sure what like it wasn't explicitly stated, I guess, in a graphic or anything like that. But I imagine it seems like they might have some sort of stipulation attached to this. By the way, did they mention SummerSlam? You won't see it coming on this show?
Thankfully, they had graphics, so I could read the tagline throughout the show.
Oh, it was there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You won't see it coming unless we put it on the screen multiple times in clear text.
Yes.
Then you'll see it coming.
I actually enjoyed the segment. I mean, like I've said, I've been enjoying Seth more lately. He really feels like just a real good maniacal heel, especially like with this Dominik storyline with Rey Mysterio. And I thought he sounded good here, as did Dominik for his limited role.
What if he threw up at the end of this?
For what reason? Long-term storytelling, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, maybe he has a gag reflex that we're going to learn of. So they had a match with Seth and Humberto Carrillo, who's back. Man's still around. Very short match. Murphy distracted as Dominik used a kendo stick, and Carrillo went for a moonsault, landed on Rollins' feet, powerbomb stomp, and he beat Carrillo in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. So, bye-bye, Humberto.
Well, at least he didn't have his eye taken out.
That's true. He left with 20/20 vision. Murphy then attacked Dominik, and we had a 2-on-1 attack as Seth was saying, "I told you, take notes." And Dominik fights free. He tries to take them down. He eats a knee, and it's the numbers disadvantage for Dominik. And then they tear off his shirt, and they beat the piss out of this poor dude with these kendo sticks. And I thought Rollins was as maniacal as possible in this segment. He's looking into the camera. "Hi, Papa Ray. Beg for mercy for your son, you coward." And it was almost to the point of overdoing it. Like, this was the Tommy Dreamer angle, like on 3 times the speed. They hit him with like 5,000 kendo stick shots. And
I mean, it's like, it is almost like 25 years later after that. So they do have to up the ante a little, don't you think?
I thought it was already like very effective, and I didn't have any real qualms with this. But then they go under the ring and they bring out more kendo sticks. I mean, it's 2 of them, but they've got like 8 kendo sticks between them. And they have Murphy from behind and Rollins from the front. And dude, the camera cuts here. It was I felt like I was getting hit with a kendo stick. And the welts over this guy's chest and back were just brutal. This was like a really heavy duty angle. And I will say, by the end of this, I don't know if you had the belief that Dominik is going to get his revenge, but at the very least, I think you want Ray to show up to extract revenge. But I thought this was like a really effective angle.
I think at the very least, the idea is whether or not you want to see either Dominik or Ray get their revenge on Seth Rollins. And, there's something about seeing like physical pain, whether it be in the form of like, Matt Hardy's like 9-stitch open wound that he suffered, or like seeing just like these welts on Dominik's back that really you can't fake. And it was just effective. It created like a very violent, serious tone, and certainly makes you kind of, it's a departure from like having a fake eye thing with the vomit. So maybe critics of that might have enjoyed something like this better. I thought this served, its purpose in several ways. One, of course, to like build heat for this match between Dominik and Seth Rollins, but for a casual audience who is just seeing this guy, Dominik Mysterio, who's never wrestled one proper singles match in his entire career, all of a sudden getting a WWE contract, at least in storyline, and then this featured match against Seth Rollins. I think it very much worked in the same way as Tommy Dreamer, trying to earn the audience's respect, to show that this kid, he's not just here because he is obviously here because he's Rey Mysterio's son, but he is also willing to work for it. He's willing to take punishment. He's willing to take some very real pain on live TV in order to earn the audience's trust. I felt like there might have been elements of that at play here, as well as, who knows, whatever like locker room stuff that it exists, there too, to try to earn the locker room's respect, perhaps. I thought all those things really made this like program and this segment very compelling.
Yeah. I've been very impressed with Dominik. Like, I don't think we appreciate how much has been thrown on this guy, given his lack of experience and what he has come through with. And to your point, especially the post-match, I thought Seth was excellent.
Yeah.
The announcers react after the break, and I was glad that Joe had this line in where he said that, you know, he is here, he is handcuffed at this desk, and he kind of just rooted on Dominik for this match with Rollins, because it was to a point that you are asking, like, where is Joe to stand up to these guys, which we had just seen him do last week, and he's just sitting here through 5,000 kendo stick shots. So, I mean, they tried to at least address it here that he does have a job and an obligation that he cannot get involved, but at the same time, he was about to do that last week.
Last week, though, was them threatening a colleague of his. Like, I guess, like, if you're in the kayfabe world of pro wrestling, it's an unspoken rule that you don't touch the people that are not performers. And last week was Joe standing up to Rollins for going after a colleague. And I thought that was absolutely fair. This week, I almost got the sense when Joe was, like, talking here to the camera that it was almost as more like, I didn't want to get involved because this was, you know, a man trying to prove his worth. And I thought if you ran with that sort of thing, by cutting to the desk and seeing, like, anguish on Joe's face, like, looking at this going on, but realizing he couldn't step in because, like, this was almost like, you know, a guy had to, like, basically earn this. And, you know, almost like a, I don't know, what do you call that? Initiation of sorts, as, you know, terrible as that sounds in 2020. But, like, that to me, that sort of storyline, and Samoa Joe characterizing himself as not just a protector, but as a mentor for Dominik, to toughen him up, I think that would be really interesting.
Tom Phillipson asks if Montez Ford is going to be good to go for SummerSlam after last week's poisoning. Right back to normal here. Zelina Vega comes out and pleads her innocence. She also threatens the NXtras to turn their masks into muzzles. And she said she would never ruin her client's title opportunity by poisoning another man. And she keeps her men in line, unlike Belair. And she had nothing to do with the poisoning, but Andrade and Garza will have everything to do with ending their tag title run. Angelo Dawkins comes out. We're still doing this bloody light dimming shit. And Tom Phillips mentions that after SmackDown, we've got extra security who did a fantastic job tonight.
Oh, God.
This is the stupidest angle of the year.
Yeah. You're talking about just the security?
No, of Retribution, period.
Oh, yes. Hey, long-term storytelling, John. You kids downloading your singles, no time for albums.
You're right. Even maybe in GIF form, I can consume this. Just give me cars tipping and chainsaws being cutting rope down.
Yes.
We also got a promo for something I will be watching never, and that is Game On, featuring The Big Show and Gabriel Iglesias on Netflix. This looked like TV Off will be my response to Game On. This looks brutal. Angelo Dawkins and Andrade, a lot of aggression from Dawkins. I hope, Way, if I ever got poisoned, you would show this level of aggression in my honor.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I would wear a headband, everything.
Because I'd be out for 2 weeks before SummerSlam, recovering from my poison. Andrade goes right into a right hand, and then Vega gets on the apron. Belair runs down, yanking her down, and Dawkins hits his version of the Dominator called the Cash Out and wins in 4 minutes. And Tom Phillips proclaims Dawkins has achieved retribution for Montez Ford.
Ooh, bad choice of words. Very insensitive, Tom.
Yes. Well, oh, you're right. I didn't even understand the retribution. But yeah, I guess a 3 count is equal to poisoning a man. We're equal.
I guess in wrestling, I mean, 3 counts actually solve a whole lot. Like, they could solve custody issues. They could solve, I don't know, sending somebody to hell. 3 counts solve a whole lot.
Yeah, they solve how to use Tank Abbott in the year 2000.
Yes, thanks.
Just to recap, after Andrade and Garza lost their non-title match, we have now had Andrade lose in this singles match. So their entire heat has been an unknown poisoning to one of the champions.
Which they didn't even commit.
Which they are not even really attached to. It's Zelina that's got the spotlight on her for the poisoning. So you could not put together two more lackluster challengers for these tag titles going into SummerSlam. I mean, they have done these two no favors.
Yeah.
This is a nothing match in 2 weeks.
With this material, I think it was going to be difficult either way. Like, they could have put, the British Bulldogs in here with, like, a Legion of Doom and doing some sort of poisoning angle. I really don't know if that would have helped.
So we go right into Zelina Vega and Bianca Belair, and this one goes over 6 minutes. We had a crucifix into a triangle attempt by Vega, and Belair gets out and stops a sunset flip with a facebuster. Vega then later hits the double knees, and Belair comes back. The KOD gets stopped. She does a big military press, and then Belair tosses her around, and then Belair runs into the post with her shoulder. But Vega gets dropped on the buckle and this time hits the KOD, the kiss of death, to win in 6 minutes, 17 seconds. Tom Phillips at the top of his lungs. Retaliation for her husband.
Retaliation, that's the other group.
Yeah, so Retribution and Retaliation were both in full force here. So let's just get over this whole poisoning thing. They got 2 wins. Stop complaining, Poison Control.
I thought a good little competitive match between these two. Getting to see Belair in these, longer Raw singles matches, I think is always a treat. She's still really fresh on this show right now, and I hope they take full advantage. You had Zelina here. I thought she looked pretty decent too. She repeatedly was telling Belair, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it." So she didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be quite something if she had a confessional right in the middle of like a triangle sequence. Okay. I laced his drink. Charlie gets into the ring and asks Bianca, "Do you have any evidence?" And Belair doesn't. She just says her and Montez, or Tez, stay out of each other's business. But Vega affected Ford's business, which I guess they stay out of each other's business, but Vega affecting Ford's business has now made Bianca's business Tez's business. I was trying to follow this.
Or Tez's business, Bianca's business.
I guess so. Dawkins says, "Don't worry, Tez is not going to miss the biggest party of the summer."
Right.
So thank God.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, from what all of this suggests, I feel like the poisoners are still out there.
Wouldn't you think that Retribution is like they've got the power supply? I'm sure they're like,
wouldn't that be a
dropping
letdown,
shit in
though?
people's drinks and stuff.
But wouldn't that be a letdown? Like, we already know Retribution. They love their Molotov cocktails. They love flipping over cars. They love cinder blocks. Poison is not really their style. It feels like they want to be known for messing people up.
Yeah, I mean, you got ninjas running around.
Who would poison? Okay.
It's a long-term story.
Yep.
Why are you just trying to get an answer now, week 2?
I think that's. What do you say to that? That's a blanket excuse, I think, for everything. Long-term story.
Yeah, you gotta wait. That was always the one. Was you gotta wait for it to play out.
Yes.
The most recent example for that was Charlotte in NXT.
So after it's played out, can I talk shit about it then?
Yes.
So we should write down all these potential... We should save this podcast, not release it till after the story.
Yeah.
I should release like 30 hours.
In WWE, I give everything 3 weeks because that's their entire reference point. Like, nothing exists beyond 2 or 3 weeks ago, and nothing is probably thought of, or at least that you can commit to 3 weeks from now.
Right.
At least with any certainty. Like, I'm sure there are many of ideas penciled in. Do we get to those? Well, we'll see. The VIP lounge. MVP's not in a celebratory mood. He says there was a conspiracy with all the technical issues last week, and this is an unsafe working environment. The lights beat MVP, not Apollo Crews last week. So these guys should be pissed at Retribution. Like, we know who was screwing with the lights. This is not a mystery.
I guess Retribution are tough to catch, right, at this point.
They didn't even try.
Yeah, instead they went to this Raw Underground, where Retribution clearly weren't. Or did he think they thought the Raw Underground guys had to do with the lights turning off? Okay. Is that it?
It could have been, yeah. The ones that they just destroyed last week.
Clearly not the case, because they left the Underground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just moved on.
Yeah, I thought they took control of the Underground.
Yeah, they said it had new management, and this week it was old management.
See, like, after last week, I think, like, I went off air, and at least some of us, like, went off air from Raw thinking that, oh, okay, they're doing this whole Underground thing as a way to push, what do they call this group?
The Hurt Business.
The Hurt Business. Clearly not the case in week 2.
No, like, that was the closing shot of Raw, was them standing tall in the Underground, and this week they had no connection to it. None. Apollo comes out. I thought very good interplay here with MVP. MVP made fun of him for missing Extreme Rules, and Crews just laughs because I'm holding the title you spent thousands of dollars on. MVP calls him a serial bad decision maker. Crews says, I'm allowed to make bad decisions because I'm a bad man. I don't care about Shelton. I don't care about Lashley. I just care about you. And the only lights going out at SummerSlam are going to be yours. And he just runs in and drops this dude and then tosses the couch to the floor. He looked great here. This guy just claimed the VIP lounge. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought, like, every week now, he's kind of been showing a bit more well-roundedness as, like, a promo. And this week, you got to hear him be very serious. I have to say, though, some of these lines, definitely sounded a little bit unnatural and kind of corny. But the only lights going out are yours.
I'm allowed to be a bad man. What's the rest?
I'm allowed to make bad decisions because I'm a bad man.
Okay.
I don't know if that one holds up in court.
Yeah. So I don't know about some of these lines, but the delivery was really strong, I thought.
Delivery is very good. Yeah. The material, I mean, you could have, like, superimpose it with, like, a Kurt Angle 2001 promo. Apollo Crews and Shelton Benjamin, non-title match. Crews is getting beaten down. He goes for the toss powerbomb, but that is stopped. Crews then hits a power slam, standing moonsault, and he goes to run the ropes. Lashley tries to trip him, but Crews is onto his game, and he kicks him, but this allows Benjamin to do the roll-up from behind. All of his practice as 24/7 champion. He's got this roll-up down to a T, and he pins Crews in 5 minutes and 11 seconds. Why? I don't know.
Fucking unbelievable, this booking. Like, seriously.
The champions are not allowed to win on this show.
I know, like, we just went through it. Didn't we just go through it a week ago on Raw? And then, like, you had SmackDown with a bunch of bullshit DQs. And then back to this edition of Raw, where Apollo Crews coming off of a championship win, like, finally beating MVP. I almost said MP3. Finally, you kids and your MP3s.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
his big challenge at SummerSlam is going to be MP3 versus The Wave.
The Wave.
For at the beach. Let's move on. Wave would be, like, way too big.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, like, I don't get this booking. I do get it.
At best, we're getting a rematch on Raw next Monday for the go home show. Like, fine.
But how does that make sense? Because, like, MVP is challenging. He already has a rematch with Apollo set for SummerSlam.
Yes.
So in between that, you're going to tell me that Shelton's going to be challenging for the belt now too?
It would be another non-title match.
That's just stupid. That's just.
I know. Not
only is it confusing, it hurts Apollo greatly. Just takes away from everything.
Again, they have a real issue when it comes to creating stars, and I'm sorry, it's not as hard as they make it out to be. With, like, all the stuff that it's just this idea of guy wins, guy loses. Mustafa Ali pins the champion, then he gets beat by another guy the next week, so he never even gets a title match. It's like, it doesn't have to be so complicated. Pick your guys, make them look strong, have them go in as this unstoppable force, and people are soon going to be like, wow, this guy wins a lot. I should really cheer for this guy because he's really good.
I would prefer it if Apollo Crews won this match against Shelton Benjamin and then had his eye taken out so that you would want to see MVP. Or fine, you want to do a rematch with Shelton? Have Shelton take his eye out. Great. I'll watch that rematch. Sure. I'd rather have that if it means Apollo Crews can actually get a win as a champion.
It's Shelton Benjamin. Like, this guy is literally there to be an obstacle before you get to the bigger match. And Lashley is just like there. He just is there.
Well, he's waiting. He's waiting for a next big program. He's almost like the heavy that like Apollo is like saying, or sorry, MVP is saying like, hey, we can handle this.
Well, Lashley goes for the full Nelson and MVP says, hey, we can handle this. Keep him healthy for SummerSlam. We don't want him to miss SummerSlam with another injury. And then Crews capitalizes with an enziguri on MVP, and then he runs away with his title. So, very strange.
So they had him lose the match.
But he lays out MVP.
Yeah, like to them, the enziguri is like an equalizer. Oh, he enziguri'd him. That means the win doesn't count.
No, it's like that technique they would do in Batman where they'd bring you to the Batcave and then they'd spray that stuff so you forget how you got there. And you just forget everything. That's what this was.
Sure, yeah.
This was the magic spray. This was Hunter's spray. Mm-hmm. Retribution is outside. This is comical. Like, it's almost amazing this stuff made it to air. This goofball security guard who just, like, nominated himself for a Razzie Award with his acting comes in. No! Terry, no! Cinder blocks, no! And these idiots just throw the cinder block through the window and they go, yeah! Yeah! What a bunch of fucking dorks. This is the lamest group that they have introduced.
Well,
I don't know. Lower than the ninjas. Like, that's where Retribution is. Like, they just, the lamest cartoon version of a group of protesters.
Well, I feel like that this portrayal might be very intentional. I think they want to portray these people as villains, who are ruining this show. Never mind, like, the fact that protesters typically have something they're actually fighting for. I mean, we don't know what Retribution are fighting for yet, but the way they're portrayed certainly like makes them seem like they just like doing damage, that they celebrate as if they're like dorks after every like breaking a glass door with a cinder block. So I think the portrayal is like intentionally to make them seem incredibly juvenile and just idiots.
So you think this is more of a commentary on the act of protesting?
I think the whole thing is.
It's totally, like, so silly. There was part of me that was waiting. There's part of me that actually thought they were going to throw the cinder block and it was going to bounce off the glass and hit them. Because that's kind of what this felt like at the end of this thing. This angle sucks. It's really bad. There's, I don't think, any saving it. They don't even interrupt the show. Like, nothing they did tonight interrupt. We don't know whose car this was. It's like, who cares? Who cares what they did here?
Yeah, well, I mean, caused a lot of flashes.
They gave us an easy edit point to kick Ric Flair in the head. Like, that was their function tonight.
Yeah.
Sarah Schreiber is with the returning Mickie James, who has not wrestled since June of 2019. She is back, and she's got gold on her mind. And she gets interrupted by the matching twins, Lana and Natalya, in their identical dresses.
Yeah, like, it's been a while since I've seen Lana and Natalya together on Raw. I have no idea what, like, they've all of a sudden, like, I guess have done a lot of character development since then. Because last we saw, weren't they just, like, agreeing to be manager and wrestler?
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw Lana maybe that one week talking about Natalya. This week they show up dressed the same. So a lot's changed with these characters.
They point out that Mickie, you don't even have TikTok. And Natalya says, I am the best competitor. I am the most winning woman in WWE. I'm the Serena Williams of the WWE. And then Lana, a light bulb flashes over her head, says, best of all time. BOAT. Hashtag Mickey says that Natalya has rode the coattails of her family, and you know what they say about boats? They sink. See you next week.
Good one. Nice. I actually think like hashtag boat best of all time is like a great like heel social media manager's idea of a good hashtag. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure there was a strategy session about this to get this over. I'm looking about if like what the comments were for boat tonight.
Because I guess that is Lana's character right now. She is like a social media manager who's just incredibly obnoxious. And is Natalya supposed to be like, I don't know, the person being influenced by the social media? Or are these two more of like a Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie type of pair?
Yeah, I think you're just going to get these are going to be their commentary on the impact of social media and how it defines your life.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Here are some. Natalya is the boat that always float. No wonder why she stays on top. Her ship isn't sinking anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got another one?
There's not too many. I don't know how. I mean, there's some here, but this was. I don't know if this was. If Lana and Natalya were a boat, they'd be this, and they have attached a photo of the Titanic. So the comedy was just oozing out of Twitter after this segment. But yeah, we will see. It looks like they'll do Natalya and Mickey next week on TV.
Hey, that should be a great match.
Should be very good. Okay, after that, what was next? We had Ivar was with this woman. I guess every week we're just gonna have women that are just out of context. We had who was her, Sarah on SmackDown, and then we had this woman who didn't even get a name.
Was this not the same woman as the what is it, The Bachelor?
Was this The Bachelor?
I don't know.
Demi?
Maybe not.
I don't think it was the same.
They don't name them like.
You know what? It might have been. It might have been actually Demi Burnett. It does look similar, so it may have been her again.
Okay, don't correct us. We don't care.
Demi can correct us if she would like. So she thinks that Ivar's pretty cute, but Eric not so much. And Ricochet and Cedric are there, and they laugh. They think this is hilarious. There's a term about a joke running its course. This one is like limping through references on Raw. I get it. Okay, this has been a hilarious inside joke that we continue every week with the Viking Raiders.
I mean, it's their main thing, you know. Like at this point, they spent so much time on that best of
Viking Profits.
Like
they made a T-shirt for them.
Oh man, they spent so much time like with those skits. You know, it really is like the biggest, most notable thing either team has done thus far. I guess other than getting poisoned in Montez Ford's case while they've been in the WWE. So it's their sole identity right now.
If you go back to February of 2019, when Ricochet was called up, and we fast forward a year and a half later, it is Ricochet, Cedric Alexander, and the Viking Raiders, who were also called up around the same time. And this is also August 10th, the anniversary of Cedric doing that Cruiserweight Classic where he was awarded a contract by Triple H. So, wow. Man, some really monumental moments for these four. Taking on Akira Tozawa and the Ninjas.
What a journey it's been.
Yeah, I mean, this has been what a roller coaster. And
man, if Kota Ibushi,
they've already won.
Can you imagine if Kota Ibushi signed? He would be he would be a great ninja. Really, he'd be an awesome ninja.
Zack Sabre Jr.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to peer in some sort of alternate timeline where Kota Ibushi and Zack Sabre Jr. agreed to WWE contracts, where they would end up in this fucked up. Oh, Zack would definitely be a part of Retribution, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, my God. Like, talk about guys that had great foresight.
Yeah, we joked about this. We already made this joke, but it's still funny. He would be Skinny Z, of course.
Skinny Z. Did we make that joke before?
I think we did. Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty good. This one, 1:11. It's Ricochet do the crane, Viking experience for the win. Who cares? One of the ninjas wouldn't tag in. He then rolled up Tozawa, won the title. It's R-Truth. It's his 38th title win.
Yeah, I guess like USA still really likes this 24/7 thing because, talk about a joke.
This was a Band-Aid a year and a half ago that they brought in.
That long ago?
This was their third-hour idea. Was this crazy 24/7 title?
Oh my god! Yeah, and it's like. It really peaked with the Drake Maverick stuff, and since then, it's just been week after week of the same thing with little effort put into it. How do we get this guy to, small package?
They brought in Mick Foley to introduce this.
Oh, man. Okay.
Charlie is with Drew McIntyre. He says Randy doesn't help the young talent and takes out legends for self-preservation to make sure he's on top as long as he can. Orton ripped the torch from Mick Foley, and once he lets go of the torch, he will be a thing of the past. So at SummerSlam, he's going to rip the torch from Orton because Evolution has passed him by. But then Charlie has a follow-up. What if Kevin Owens rips the torch from Orton tonight? Drew says, well, then me and Kevin will have a long conversation about the future of Raw. What does it mean to take the torch?
To take the torch. Okay,
it's not just beating a guy because Orton's lost plenty. He's had this torch for 16 years.
Okay, the idea of like passing the torch when used in like kayfabe terms in pro wrestling, it's always been one of those terms that have really kind of blurred the lines between reality and fiction, hasn't it?
Because in kayfabe, Drew should be like this. He should be the guy.
Oh yeah, let's say in MMA, to say that you've taken the torch, or like to say somebody, you could still say pass the torch. It just means like you have to win it like legitimately. You know
a perfect example would be the two fights Max Holloway had with Jose Aldo, where he had become champion, but then he beat Jose Aldo again, and it really cemented him as, the either on par as the greatest featherweight of all time or surpassing Aldo. Until he faced Alexander Volkanovski.
So can you think of an example where somebody can willingly stop the torch from being passed in a real sport?
In a real sport? Well, yeah. You don't get beaten. Like in real sports, like it culminates in like the star of the next generation, like unseating the previous one. Like in sports, like a major record being broken.
Yeah. So in the context
in this fantasy world of pro wrestling, it's kind of like, what are we measuring this on? Like, and Mick Foley, like, what torch did he have to hand to Randy Orton?
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that I think has just been accepted. That like, hey, wink, wink, we know what you're really talking about, but we're gonna.
And how could Kevin Owens end up with this torch by the end of tonight?
Yeah. I don't know.
What if Kevin Owens had come out and he saw some rolled up papers, a la the Dark Order, in the back of Randy's trunks, took it, and it was the torch. And he hit Randy over the head.
Pass me this week's edition of the torch.
Randy, it's the key to it all.
That Randy Orton is just such a hog. Every week he gets it from Wade and just holds on to it.
Liv Morgan took on Peyton Royce. I think we just made sense of the entire angle.
Yeah, like none of the WWE locker room know how to read digitally. They just have to rely on hard copies. Yes.
Liv Morgan came out with Ruby Riott. They're all buddies again, to take on Peyton Royce. And the Iconic said, the Riots, they're back and better than ever, which I thought was the theme of Dynamite last week with Eric Bischoff.
Classic song.
They have been shaping their futures, and their futures are remarkable.
With 2 R's.
Yeah. Morgan drove Royce's face into the apron, then walked into a spin kick. They do a double head kick, and both go down. Ruby stops Billie Kay from interfering, but in the process of doing this, confuses Liv, who is watching Ruby, and allows Peyton to hit her from behind and win with the deja vu in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And Liv is all annoyed at Ruby for costing her the match. So there is trouble in paradise between the recently rehabilitated friendship of Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott.
So that's what Peyton Royce ended up calling that, like, spinning brainbuster?
Yes, they called it the Deja Vu.
Feel like there were better suggestions than that. The Rolls Royce is perfect, don't you think?
Kind of been taken now, hasn't it? That term?
By what?
By Baker. By Britt Baker.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Damn it. All right, Deja Vu.
You know what she should call it?
What?
The Royce Grace.
Peyton Royce. No, this is terrible. This is a terrible podcast. Okay, so yeah, totally fine match I thought between these two. Like in the cases of like where storyline actually progresses, and I don't think either person really has a whole lot to lose. I really don't mind these sort of distraction finishes. To me, this served a purpose. It advanced the story here. You think Liv and Ruby are reunited, but they're not exactly on the same page yet.
Yeah, maybe they'll need Paige to get them on the same page.
Was that the team?
No,
that
Paige was with
Sonya
Sonya and Mandy.
She's got to get involved somehow.
Paige?
Maybe? Yeah, don't you think?
She should. Paige, I really like Paige when she was a general manager. And now that Backstage is done, I hope they find a role for her because I thought she was very, very, very good in that speaking role on SmackDown.
Yeah. Did you happen to see this Twitch angle that they did on...
I only heard about it. I didn't actually see it. Did it come off okay?
No, I only heard about it too. But I thought it was an interesting idea. It was sorry, I forget who.
It was Bianca and Zelina.
Yes, you're right. Bianca showed up to Zelina's Twitch stream and attacked her for poisoning her husband.
I like the idea. Like maybe it came off campy. I didn't see it, but I don't mind that as an idea. This totally should be AJ's angle though. Like that is the Twitch stream to infiltrate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least a promo battle of some sort.
Mr. Styles. Paul Heyman here. They can just have a Twitch debate.
Paul Heyman on Twitch? Yeah.
Paul Heyman with AJ
Brock Lesnar on Twitch, really?
Oh, that could be something. I rewatched the first Daniel Cormier-Stipe fight from 2 years ago, and man, had I forgotten Brock's promo after that fight, where that was the big talking point was we're going to get Brock and Cormier coming out of that. And you've got Brock who just gets in there. He's got his big cowboy boots on and the dude's just towering over Cormier. And Rogan interviews him. He's like, look at this heavyweight piece of shit picture I just stepped into. And Ngannou's a piece of shit. Stipe's a piece of shit. And Daniel Cormier, you're a piece of shit. And then he just like throws the mic at like the camera. It's like this guy was just what a piece of work this guy was.
Oh
like
God,
if you are not following WWE, I totally get why there would be a significant amount of people who would just be like, this fucking guy is just too much.
Yeah, I could see that too. But I mean, as a wrestling fan, I love it. I thought he was so great.
They had a window to do that fight, but I think that by now has certainly passed. But I think like it quickly moved on. There were just way more interesting fights to me for Cormier.
WrestleMania 38.
You could always do the wrestling match. Like, I do feel Cormier does something with WWE at a point.
I feel like he'll definitely get an offer.
Hey, at this point, with Kane not in the mix, maybe it's not WWE he wants to do. Maybe he wants to do something elsewhere. Him and Kane should be the tag team.
Interesting. What, are you suggesting another company?
Well, it's hey, there was a bidding war for Kane.
And
he's not with one of them.
Do you see Kane going to like an AEW?
I see Kane definitely revisiting pro wrestling.
Yeah,
I also see him. AEW would certainly be near the top of the list, but I could see him doing AAA as well when they get back on their feet. Like Kane's been working with Cormier for this whole camp leading up to the fight with Stipe. So okay. I mean, he's been in the gym and been busy. But that was a guy that you could see he was doing pro wrestling because he genuinely loved doing it, and not because he got a great offer from WWE, but it was all his stuff pre WWE that had all the buzz going, and that buzz is really dissipated after the WWE experiment.
How crazy! Like in the past year,
just nuts.
WWE had signed Cain Velasquez. They had signed what the fuck, that football player, Gronk.
Oh yeah, Gronk. Yeah,
and both those guys,
they're both gone.
Yeah.
This was a year ago. Right now, we were talking about Kane coming off of Triple Mania, when I would say his buzz was at a peak for pro wrestling.
You do a few Hurricane Ranas, you get a bunch
Hurricane
of
Ranas.
Oh, yes.
Not my creation, but time for Raw Underground. Big Jordan lets Shane into the lair, and that's his job now. He went from a ninja to a security guard.
One of many roles, I'm sure, of what I'm sure will be a great long-lasting career.
Our first fight was Cal Bloom, the son of Wayne Bloom, one of the Beverly brothers.
Oh.
And an extra, taking on Riddick Moss, former 24/7 champion. And this starts well before 10 p.m. Well before, meaning 6-7 minutes before, which I would just say you're advertising 10 o'clock. If people were tuning in for 10 o'clock, they missed this whole thing.
Yeah, that was a little strange. I mean, you can't necessarily advertise 9:56. That would be a little awkward. But, they clearly wanted to get people to watch Raw Underground at 10 o'clock, but they also wanted to have Bayley versus Asuka at 10 o'clock.
Bloom takes him down. Shane's commentary is awful. He is an MMA fan out of 2007 yelling, "Stand him up! Stand him up!"
He's like, ooh. What,
ah!
Hey, when is Phil Nurse going to show up to the Underground?
Probably, yeah. Henzo would be way better on commentary. Boss Rutan and Henzo doing commentary.
And then John Danaher can't be that far behind. Danaher would fuck dudes up in this Underground.
The issue with a man like Cal is the bloom comes off the rose. This match had... They went to the floor.
I can't believe you're actually going to recap this match.
I'm trying. Please. There's no rules as they go into the walls. And then Riddick Moss just gouges this dude's fucking eye, headbutts him, and just stomps the shit out of him for the stoppage.
And then he says, "Can you see me now?"
Oh, God, I missed that.
Yeah.
Can you see me now?
His opponent couldn't.
No, he couldn't. No, you could not see me.
Big win for Riddick Moss. I have to say,
Listen, they are taking people, and if you can get past the awful aesthetic and very, the setting I think works against it. The camera angles are just the cuts are just very, very WWE bad. But at their core, they're giving you short squash matches in as serious a form as WWE can get in 2020, which in this day and age is eye gouges, stomping, and killing a man.
When you watch the types of matches, I feel like there's little difference between what you see here with even Riddick Moss and seeing what the type of match Killer Cross is having on NXT. It's a similar style, and in the end, you have a guy look like a legitimate fighter So I'm not saying Riddick Moss is on that level, but this is certainly better for Riddick Moss than any 24/7 match could have been for him. Any association with the 24/7 title could have been. However, all that said, there is no indication that anything that these guys do on Raw Underground is more than a one-off. No Dolph Ziggler on this show, no Eric as a part of this whole thing, no Hurt Business even. So it's not like we have, 2 weeks in, any sort of semblance of an actual league of Raw Underground guys. These just more feel like casual, one-off vignettes at this point.
We didn't have the dancing women in this, did we?
I think they... Yeah, I didn't really notice them.
Were they there?
I mean, I'm sure they were there because this was the same set, but...
This was all the same taping, so it would not seem like...
That I noticed.
Which I think that was pretty universally panned last week. So I think next week is more interesting because then it'll be, okay, what criticism have they taken to heart and what adjustments do they make to this? Because this and last week were really the pilot form of this. Yeah. But I am curious to see what they do next week. And do they, I would expect next week they're going to promote something like one of these fights for SummerSlam, shoot some angle because I do see this being part of SummerSlam.
Hey, let me ask you, like, so is there something when you're underground that prevents the spread of novel coronavirus?
No.
Because why do the NXtras need to all wear masks when they're up in the arena, but when they're down in the underground, it's optional?
This is like the Sturgis rally. They're willing to take
no
a
rules.
risk. Yeah,
I see.
they're all stars.
Yeah, Smash Mouth coming down here. Yeah.
Bayley and Asuka. Let's go over the premise here. Asuka has to beat the SmackDown Women's Champion in order to get a Raw Women's Championship shot.
Yes.
Completely ludicrous, but
outrageous.
Nonetheless, let's just throw that out the window. Asuka attacks her immediately and then hits a German and a hip attack. Drops her off of the corner. We go through the commercial break. Asuka's high kick gets caught, and Bayley applies a knee bar and starts attacking the ankle. Banks would also get involved attacking the ankle behind the referee's back. Asuka would recover, applying an octopus, and then transition to an armbar into a cover. Bayley transitions out of that to an Indian deathlock. Asuka then counters to a knee bar. She's torquing on it. Bayley suplexes her way out, but Asuka lands on top of her. Some really great transitions. Then Asuka hits the code breaker, which in WWE vernacular, double knee strike for a 2 count. Bayley then hits a top rope elbow and hits the Judas effect in WWE vernacular, elbow. And then a sunset bomb sends her into the corner, and Bayley starts mocking Kairi Sane by marching to the corner and charges at Asuka and gets caught with the Asuka lock and is forced to tap out. I thought these two had a really strong match.
Yeah, ignoring the fact that the circumstances are that Bayley is your SmackDown champion put in as just a obstacle for your other champion. I really liked this. It was a really good match for TV. A lot of really cool submission exchanges. Really, really fast and intense pace. And Asuka, to me, has just been on fire. Bayley really, too, has been on fire. It's just unfortunate the booking has kind of made her real joke. Losing to both Kairi and to Asuka.
Well, champions have to lose on this show in non-title scenarios.
I'll tell you, aside from the match, my other highlight of this was hearing the NXtras, for some reason, chanting, "We will rock you." So not only are they doing that, somebody starts singing the lyrics to the song. They're doing the whole thing.
I hope this clip gets flagged on YouTube tomorrow for that.
And I just have no idea why. It's not like, either of these maybe one of them thought Asuka was Emi Sakura or something. None of these wrestlers have anything to do with Queen. But my only reasoning is that these guys must be so miserable and so bored. They're trying to entertain themselves at this point with anything.
Listen, I do have a lot of sympathy for these NXtras that have to stand for God knows how long. And this would be so annoying to have to do so many times because it's a lot of the same faces we see. But I'm getting really annoyed by some of the catcalling and yelling over people's promos.
I was entertained by this.
Some of it gets
more Freddie Mercury, less catcalling.
I mean, when someone gets the right line in, eye for an eye match. Some of them can be funny, but at other times it can just be it just seems like they're entertaining themselves, which sometimes hits, but other times misses for me.
So you want generic fan crowd noise? Is that it, John?
I want to press a button and hear cheers, and I want to press another button to hear boos.
I tried to listen, I tried to watch so John is referring to what New Japan's been trying out, at least for their last show, where they're encouraging fans to download an app, and you can download a male app. I guess in the app, there's a male version and a female version where you can press a button to boo or cheer. So I tried to listen to it on the show, and I couldn't really find where they might have used it. I don't know if you noticed, but it's a great idea.
I imagine it's that old WWF microphone you could buy when you were a kid, and it had the 1, 2, 3 on the side of it. It's boo,
with our phones,
and then we get a mixture of them.
Are phones really loud enough to be picked up like that? I guess when you have a bunch at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm open for any kind of different ideas, if it would work or not.
Where's the "you deserve it" button?
Fight forever.
Yes.
Back to Raw Underground, and we got Arturo Ruas in his jeans.
Oh, come on. You can't be edgy wearing a proper wrestling clothes. What are you, John? Over 50? Come on. Get into the demo. Get into the Prime demo. We don't wear uniforms.
Did you watch the opening couple of minutes of Being the Elite? It was very funny.
I briefly, yeah. I think I watched it on 2 times. But
they really just tore apart the Dexter Lumis spot, and just they really just took their digs at NXT. It was it was entertaining, but nonetheless, Arturo Ruas here, just this is a guy who has it's like a capoeira background, and they were talking about his grappling. He hit this spinning wheel kick that sent this dude to the floor, slammed him. Shane's yelling, "Stand him up!" And hits him with a spinning wheel kick knockout a la Edson Barbosa to Terry Edom. And the guy died.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say, I think their choices of people to feature on these underground things has been really good. Even, seeing somebody like Riddick Moss, do some of his, amateur wrestling stuff, I thought was really great. And obviously seeing Arturo Ruas, somebody with a very legitimate background, seeing him do capoeira and just... do a bit of MMA. I was compelled, but I'm also speaking as a fan of Bloodsport and this particular style. So I enjoyed it. Did it work for you?
I mean, I feel like what they are. I will take this in terms of, okay, here are several people that we have ideas for, because the regular way has resulted in Akira Tozawa, of Shorty G, of Ricochet. I will take this more serious approach to guys that are just murdering dudes, as opposed to the rank and file way of which we introduce someone, they go 50-50, they get some goofball gimmick because you can't just be a strong wrestler. You need some character attached to you. And then you're fighting for the 24/7 title.
Yeah. In trying to replicate a very cliched, idea of what a Fight Club looks like, they might have inadvertently stumbled onto the idea of making new debuts look strong.
Yeah, and to all the negativity that last week brought, if this had been a live show this week and I saw those numbers last week, I would take some of that criticism to heart, but at the same time, I would not be tinkering to it to such a degree that I don't know what those people that tuned in felt about that third hour. I don't want to completely change it in case I'm onto something here. And people may complain about it, but you also have to take in the overarching data that you have to find out, is there some legs to this, or was that a 1 week phenomenon last week and it crashes back down to earth this week? We don't know, but you have to try. Mm-hmm. Then we had our man, DABBA-KATO.
DABBA-KATO, Master Wato, dream match.
Oh, fuck.
The Kato
there we go, folks. DABBA-KATO. He sweeps this dude. They've been very careful as well that they do not identify the dudes getting killed.
Yeah, I guess that's...
Because maybe they're feeling like this is going to taint them in the viewer's eyes, which, I mean...
How about a fake name, then? What they used to do with...
You can come up with a fake name. It comes off to me kind of... I feel it comes off more contrived when you're not even identifying the participants. It's one guy, where it's this exhibition. So, he... as we try and talk about any kind of seriousness
I take it all
here,
back. I take it back.
He hits his knees from the clinch, and then he grabs the dude by the testicles and drops him with the right hand. And this, I don't know, any seriousness attached to DABBA-KATO was out the window for me with this. This was just so ridiculous. This was, to me, like Vince McMahon's idea of what fighting looks like. Like, this is real fighting. Why wouldn't you grab him in the balls? That would stop anybody.
I guess that's what makes pro wrestling interesting, John. You have, real people with legitimate backgrounds, and then you have big dudes grabbing other dudes by the balls.
This was the one I hated the most of these little exhibitions they had.
It was the most cartoonish one, yes.
Yeah, totally silly. They're also spelling Dabba-Kato.
Good. Important distinction.
Then Shayna Baszler enters and has a face-off with DABBA-KATO, but Yabba Dabba gets out of there. And Shayna just yanks up a woman from the floor and starts beating the piss out of her. Another woman runs in, and then a third one. The third one was Emily Anzulis, who is one of the PC talents. And Shayna just pretty much takes out these three, dropping them, throwing them, and then a Kirifuda clutch for the submission.
Yeah. Again, if you're just looking at this as a way to promote Shayna Baszler by having her destroy 3 random jobbers, I thought it was a good way to promote Shayna, to showcase, her style that she really excels at doing. I think from, the time we saw it yesterday, a lot of us felt like, yeah, this was a perfect setting for a wrestler like Shayna Baszler, for her to be able to show her thing. I overall found this match and really some of the ones prior to this more engaging than your typical meaningless Raw match. I don't know if it's just a novelty about it for me, but to me the bigger question is are these just one-offs, or are we actually trying to build storylines with some of these people?
Maybe maybe you could do the explanation. Nia Jax is suspended, but they can have an underground match at SummerSlam.
Okay. Interesting. They have yet to do that. They've yet to have star versus star, or at least real performer, two people with names.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what they do next week with this. Because I think if the third hour does relatively well tomorrow, that we could see the WWE tried and true. We've got a winning formula, and let's just run it to death next week, and it's all over the show.
Yeah.
I think they need to be careful to limit this. And for all we know, week 2 may not hold up that week 1 did. What's your sense of the interest level? Do you think it was a novelty last week?
Certainly, there's a great deal of curiosity attached to it, and I think a lot of people, judging by the reaction, were really turned off. So I don't think they'll be tuning back in again. So I expect the number to be lower. Does that mean that it's not worth continuing the experiment? I personally don't think so. I think trying something different is what you need right now. Discard what doesn't work and keep what works. And watching this week, I feel like there were certain things that absolutely worked.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them tinkering before they drop it completely, but there will come a point where, if they don't feel it's hitting, we'll never hear of this thing again. But we'll see.
This thing is so different though from a wild card rule, or even I don't know, a 24/7
brand to brand invitational.
Yeah, they put effort into creating the set and everything. I feel like they're it's got a head somewhere. Shane has really yet to explain himself why he started doing this. Is this a part of a bigger story, or is it just hey, here's a different arena for different types of matches?
Retribution tipped over a car.
Yep.
Randy Orton accompanied by Ric Flair versus Kevin Owens. Early on, the stunner and RKO are attempted and blocked, and Owens hits him with a super kick, cannonball on the floor. They go through the commercial. Owens is nursing a bad shoulder and has run into the steps as Flair is yelling at him. Orton is stomping on him inside the ring. Owens comes back, hits him with the senton, and then Orton avoids the pop-up powerbomb and drops Owens onto the announcer's desk. Owens then headbutts him off the turnbuckle, preventing a superplex, hits the senton, and then Owens does the RKO setup and goes for the stunner, which is countered into the RKO, and Randy gets the clean cover. The right finish to do. That's what this was for. Owens is the setup guy, and Orton gets a clean victory.
I thought a pretty strong match on a TV show on an edition of Raw. Some really good, clean heel work from Orton here. Pace I thought was really strong. It was not your typical, slower, methodical Orton match. And I have to imagine, Owens being here is a big part of that. So it sets him up for a title match.
Afterward, Flair raises Orton's arm, and Orton gets on the mic and tells Rick to stay put. We go to commercial. We come back.
Stay through the commercial.
Yes, just stay put. Which I would have thought they might have called Rick at home and told him that, but they did not. Orton says He has every right to be pissed at Rick, but he just can't. The match against Kevin Owens tonight was unnecessary. It only happened because of Flair's ego last week that led to this match being set up. He's learned so much from Rick. He grew up watching him. Flair has always had his back, and one of the reasons that Randy is still here 20 years later. He brings up an incident from 2002, 2003 in Peoria, Illinois, where he got in trouble, and Flair was the only one to bail him out. He loved Flair after that. But I don't respect you anymore. I don't love you anymore because you're a liability to me and my career and what I'm trying to get done. Orton says that Flair followed him because he wanted the son he wished he had. And I thought this was certainly treading into territory I did not want to see them go into. Like, bringing up Rick's sons, to me, I just did not want to hear them go into this.
Yeah.
That was the extent of the line, but still, it was like...
He is referring to, a time when, Reed was still alive.
Yeah, I mean, Rick...
But still, the image that it brings up is...
You're referencing, David, but especially Reed, you are bringing reference to, and I just think, what a traumatic subject for any time period, much less having to use this for a wrestling promo. He goes on to make fun of Ric Flair, who's always crying, and says that the Ric Flair he knew wouldn't need a pacemaker or fall into a coma. He's a whore for the spotlight. He's washed up, and you can't do it anymore. Flair takes the microphone and says, I'm taking this very personally. He says that the Flair he came to see in 2001, he's not here anymore. Yes, I like the spotlight. Yes, I call you the greatest, Randy. I'm on Raw, and it's the greatest feeling in the world. Hulk Hogan calls me up to ask me what it's like, and he wants to be here to see Randy win his 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th title and break his record, not John Cena and that bullshit record. Orton knows what Flair went through on the road because your dad went through that road schedule. You, Randy, are the greatest performer in the business today, and I can't get mad because after 31 days in intensive care, I woke up and all I wanted out of my life was to tell the people I had not told that I loved them and that everyone that I've loved knew how I felt, and I phoned up everyone that mattered. And I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I'm just playing Charlotte's dad and being here in your corner. And Randy then grabs Rick and hugs him and then gets down and low blows Rick. And Rick goes down. Randy whispers into his ear and then sets up in the corner for the punt kick. The lights go dark. Then they come back on. And as Randy winds up for the punt kick, the lights go dark. And when they come back on, Rick is unconscious. And finally, Drew McIntyre runs down. Flair is being tended to. And Drew is just staring a hole through Randy Orton and says, everything is coming to you, Randy, at SummerSlam. I'm going to hurt you. And they just look back and forth for a long period of time. And this was our closing segment and the end of Ric Flair.
Yeah. I thought it was a great segment. I think a lot of us had felt that Orton could very well be in his prime as a performer right now. And we saw glimpses of how Flair looked in these backstage segments, but I thought this was the biggest role that Rick's had in years, and it required a different level of emotion from him, a different level of just acting from him, and I thought he was right up there with Randy Orton. This was
excellent,
top performance from Flair, perhaps his best in years. So now that this is done, okay, this is the story is over, so we can comment on it. I understand why Ric Flair needed to be there every single week because they wanted to establish that Flair and Orton are in the midst of this kind of ongoing relationship, and you needed to excuse Flair for wanting to basically be a hanger-on, according to Randy Orton, because he can't, say goodbye to the spotlight. There's so many questions that we have to continue to ask. Like, is this worthwhile? Like, is it worthwhile to bring Ric Flair in for all these weeks to lead up to this particular segment? I mean, I don't even necessarily have those answers right now, but
I don't think you can justify, someone with those health problems. Like, no wrestling angle justifies that to me.
Yeah.
You can still enjoy this angle. Like, this was like a really phenomenal segment, and Rick was great, and Randy was great, and it builds on the story of Randy destroying everyone that was close to him, and he's isolated himself from everybody. Everyone's gone. You can appreciate the story while at the same time be, concerned about not just the fact of Rick's health problems, but the fact that, his wife came down with COVID. I mean, there was a million warnings that, make it uneasy that no great segment can justify to me.
Sure. Yeah, I don't disagree there either. This is what they had planned, seemingly from the get-go. Establish a relationship with, in 2020 between Flair and Orton on screen, so that by the end of it, you can have the turn feel that much more effective. Like if this was a one-off and Flair just showed up this week, like for the first time, having this segment with Orton and Orton still punt kicked him, I think it would have still been effective, but it wouldn't have been as effective. I will give him that. But it's risk reward. It wasn't worth it. All that said, is they went with it, and the end result was really strong. Orton was fantastic. Flair was fantastic. If we're going to poke holes, it would certainly be in where the fuck was Drew McIntyre? Why did it take so long for him to come in? And why did it take so long for the MTs to run in? They could have, I feel like they could have had Drew come in, stop the punt, but then get laid out by Orton anyway. So Orton continues to go ahead with the punt while Drew watches ringside. Like something like that.
They've been so careful with Drew that I don't think they want to put him in any kind of weak light. But
doesn't this make him look worse?
I thought it was too late. Like there I think is like that amount of time that you can make it reasonable, but it was beyond that. Like this was such a slow, methodical setup for the punt that by the time Drew, I would have complained more if Drew didn't show up, because to me that's like a larger gap. But the fact it was so late, it's impossible to ignore that. And again, that's where it doesn't take all the creativity in the world to explain that, this is a closed set. Drew was not just backstage. He was outside the building and you can come up with reasons. And all it takes is a line or two from your announcers to explain, Drew is, he's in a bus that's, 400 feet away from the building. It's not everyone's hanging out backstage in this environment.
He was in the underground.
You can come up with different reasons, but WWE does not look at those details too often. And it's just sort of, you're left to explain it yourself. And
see, they do, but they don't. Sometimes they will go out of the way to explain something that I don't think any of us would have really thought about. And then other times, yeah, this would be. But I feel like something like this would be worth addressing in the next week, the next time we, Drew McIntyre himself in a promo.
Maybe he does. I will say, though, I thought the segment was very strong. And I feel that this match feels like a big main event for a big pay-per-view with Drew and Randy.
I agreed. I think all the major principal players in this feud so far have been fantastic. I mean, this was a great way of taking the Randy Orton that you've built through this Edge program and translating him to meet your top babyface that you're trying to promote in Drew McIntyre, who's also been on fire really lately. The big tests to me have been, can Drew McIntyre stand up to the level of performer that Randy Orton is? And the answer has been yes. Not only has Drew been able to do that, but Ric Flair has been able to do that. So everybody, all three people here have been operating at very, very high levels. So yeah, I agree with you. Very strong.
I would say the strongest points of Raw, I thought the Dominik angle was very strong. The closing angle, extremely strong. Those would be the highlights for me on the show tonight. And Bayley and Asuka.
Agreed there. I thought Owens Orton was a good match as well. And then a whole lot of other stuff.
Okay, we've been going long, so let's zip through feedback. Tonight on the forum, you gave the show a 5.5. Paul from New Jersey writes, I enjoyed the Seth Rollins promo. Him, Joe, and Dominik played off each other well. I actually liked the poisoning angle. Apollo has found a new gear, and the Natty Lana pairing works well. Ricochet and the Viking Raiders are still booked like dorks, so some things never change. Raw Underground gets a thumbs up, but Retribution comes off like the jobber orphan gang from the movie The Warriors. Which match are you more intrigued by come SummerSlam weekend? Dominik versus Rollins or McAfee versus Adam Cole? I'm very intrigued by Pat McAfee.
I'm actually a bit more interested in Dominik and Rollins.
I think it's been built up much, much better.
Yeah.
Though I don't discount that Cole and McAfee is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, I think both matches will be laid out very well.
Who had the better punt?
I thought the Cole one was almost too silly. The Orton one we really didn't get to assess tonight. I mean, it was dark. It was too dark.
Okay, we got Andrew from Cape Breton who says, "What will Retribution do next? They've already broken glass and flickered the lights. Maybe they'll throw toilet paper around the performance center. That would be horrible to clean up." Raw was okay tonight. I enjoyed Seth Rollins and his segment with Dominik. A lot of this angle has been pretty good, except for the whole fake eye thing. I liked Randy Orton in the final segment, even though Drew McIntyre was very late. As for Raw Underground, you could tell who is good in this style and who isn't. I wasn't a fan of the first match with Riddick Moss and Cal Bloom, as it came off as just a regular wrestling match. I think that's why they need to establish more rules and what makes this different from regular matches inside a WWE ring. I also found the camera cuts really noticeable. During the Arturo Ruas match, I was trying to watch it and it was so difficult to pay attention. I like that style of wrestling when it's done right.
And that's going to be the bigger challenge is when this, like, you're trying to get these performers over, like, how does this translate when they're on Raw, for instance? Like, are they doing this same style when they're in a WWE match? Like, how do you make that transition, which is a ways off, but that should be the goal. Like, you can't just keep these people in their Raw Underground bubble.
I wonder if, like, these are questions that, like what is the end goal of a Raw Underground? You know, is it to try to elevate somebody, like, no pun intended, to, like, the main stage? Is it just something cool to try out? I don't know.
I think it's, I would like to say it's trying to create some new stars, but I think the principal reason is this is a Band-Aid. This is to curb, this is all about television viewership.
Right.
From John Sino, plot twist. Angelo Dawkins was the one who poisoned Montez Ford. Why else would they keep this mystery going? I feel like they see Montez as a bigger single star, and this is the way to propel him in that direction. I mean, it would make no sense, for one.
Yeah, it would make very little sense. But
my tag team championship partner, I'm going to poison.
Yeah, it would make no sense. And I think it would also be death for Angelo Dawkins.
No, it would be death for Montez Ford, potentially.
Both of them, really. Like, one would get poisoned, the other would have a. I don't know if I would, like, if Dawkins is a single star right now. I can't see them breaking up the Street Profits just yet. I think it's too early. But that's an interesting theory, John Cena. Alexander from the Portland Underground, who says the directing at the end made Orton and McIntyre feel like an anime fight scene about to happen. I've never been a big fan of Orton as top champion, but right now he seems like the perfect man for it. If Brock is going to be gone for the foreseeable future, Orton has the number one heel. As the number one heel makes sense. Hopefully a title reign could let us see him in a cinematic match to redeem his haunted house with Bray Wyatt. With Retribution attacking on Friday and messing with the lights today, could you see their antics spreading to NXT?
I mean, they've been very careful to separate Raw with SmackDown. We get that overlap, but not with NXT. And I hope it doesn't extend to NXT because I think it's a negative to every program. So I prefer it be on 2 shows as opposed to 3 shows.
I think you would have had it this past Wednesday, wouldn't you? Like, they struck last week.
I mean, it was only introduced on Monday, last Monday,
yeah,
for those tapings. NXT was taped last week. So, I mean...
Taped last week, like after Raw?
It was taped before Raw.
Oh, okay.
NXT has new tapings this Wednesday.
Well, they better have the security cameras up.
We'll find out on Wednesday, yes. Ben from Vancouver, that was the best Seth has ever looked in this Messiah character. Props to Dominik for taking that beating. Nice to be reminded that being a singles champion means you suck. Good job, Apollo and Bayley. That Bianca-Zelina match was incredibly stiff, but Bianca looked impressive. The Raw Underground stuff still lacks context. Why are these guys competing? What do they get if they win? That first fight was a total mess. Could have used a fight judge. Where's the Great Muta up to? What's the Great Muta up to? I'll tell you what he's up to. Beating Kaito Kiyomiya on the Noah card on Monday. That's what Great Muta's up to. Retribution is extremely lame, and I love how the announcers don't mention anything about what happened on SmackDown for half an hour. So they did mention they have heightened security. They did bring that up. Who will be swerving at SummerSlam? Ric Flair, Aleister Black, or Dominik? Who will be swerving? I don't expect Ric Flair at SummerSlam. Black should be there, or Dominik.
You think so? I don't even know if Aleister Black will be there. He's
maybe not. If you've got Ray, you don't need Aleister.
Yeah.
So
I don't think Flair will be there either.
No, I didn't think Rick. Rick should be gone from this point forward.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't like what Dominic's not going to turn. Who's he going to turn on? He's in the match.
Yeah, himself.
Whoa. They'll never see it coming.
I shed my identity.
What? Is that swerving on yourself?
Yeah. He reveals what the custody was in 2005. I'm not a Mysterio. I'm Seth's brother.
Oh, man. Wow. Alrighty.
That is going to bring an end to Rewind to Raw. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Tuesday night, it's our Rocky review, as we're going to go back to 1976 and see how Rocky Balboa holds up with 2002 standards. Wai, enjoy the film. We will be chatting with all of you then. In the meantime, the full schedule is up at postwrestling.com. And as I always like to say, Wai?
Take care of yourselves and each other.